Well, as we continue in our series entitled Faith Plus, based on the words of the Apostle Peter in 2Peter chapter 1, verses 5 to 7, we think today about adding perseverance to our faith. Now, it's important to remember that as Peter lists these 7 attributes that we need to add to our faith, they are not given in some kind of order. So we don't add perseverance after self-control and before godliness. What happens is that we actually add them all into the mixing bowl of our lives, of our faith, all at the same time, and then we make every effort in order to grow in them all concurrently. It's just that as our lives are stirred through the journey of faith, each of these qualities will come to the fore at different and various times. And we soon realise the interconnectedness of all of them. So, for instance, when we lose our self-control, or we fail to choose the good path, or we become lax in our learning of knowledge, it is perseverance that we then need. It is a characteristic that enables us to stick to the others and stick at the others until we see them flourish. So today, let's have a little think about adding perseverance to our faith. Now, we as a family, like many of you, have walked a lot of the Pembrokeshire coast path. We are blessed, aren't we, to have such an amazing beauty literally on our doorstep. But what we often find, Ken and I, what we often find is that when we plan to do a walk of part of the coastal path, usually in a circular walk, we normally end up overestimating our ability and underestimating the route. And there was one walk that we did in particular from Solva to Points Castle. It was actually to celebrate Keris's birthday. And we set off in high spirits, enjoying the fine weather and the beautiful coastline. But then suddenly we realised that the Points Castle ice cream parlour, which is where we were heading for her birthday, was actually going to close in about an hour. So having realised that, Ken then decided that he was going to frog march Keris and I all the way to the ice cream parlour and chivvied us up every time we paused for breath. And so having got to the ice cream parlour, had a lovely ice cream, got there at the rate of knots, I might add, and then by the time we'd walked like halfway back, I think all of us were of the opinion that we'd had enough. We had walked too far. And by now we had boots that felt like lead weights and legs that felt like matchsticks. And it was made worse because, as you can see on the screen, we were having to carry our little dog, who also decided that she didn't want to walk anymore either. So at that point, we were all of the opinion that we had gone too far. But the problem was, we didn't have a choice. We were stuck on the coastal path. If we wanted to get home, we had to get back to the car, which meant we had to walk the rest of the way to Solva. So what did we do? We persevered. We kept going. We had no choice. We persevered until we literally collapsed into the car. Now, when we think about perseverance, that is often what we think about. A situation where we have no choice, but we've got to keep on walking or keep on climbing or swimming or running. A time when we have to keep on learning or developing or growing. We have to keep persisting in our efforts. And the New Testament encourages that idea, as it encourages us to be persisting in prayer. For instance, Luke tells the parable that Jesus told in Luke 11 of the persistent friend who kept asking his friend for bread and wouldn't stop asking until he got it. And likewise, says Jesus, we need to persevere and persist in our prayerful requests to God. The apostles encourage us to keep going in our service of the Lord and to continue doing so despite any weariness that we may feel, spiritual weariness. Galatians 6 and verse 9 says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. A sentiment that is echoed in Hebrews 10:36, 1 Corinthians 15 and 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And of course, Paul likens the Christian faith to a race that is to be run. And we must keep on running until we reach the finish line. 1 Corinthians 9 verse 24. Persistence, keeping on, carrying on. All valid and important aspects of this idea of perseverance. But actually, as Peter writes in 2 Peter 1 verse 6 about adding perseverance to our faith, he actually writes with a slightly different focus. For him, it's not merely about persisting in something that needs to be done, but it's about bearing up under a load that we have to carry. And in fact, we glean a good idea of what Peter means when we read the words of James, who uses the same Greek word for perseverance. So in James chapter 1, 2-4, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. So for Peter and James, the perseverance that we must add to our faith is perseverance under trials. That is why they use the Greek word, which basically means to remain under. It is that picture of a person bearing a heavy load upon their shoulders, and despite their knees buckling and their back breaking, they stay there. They don't drop the burden and flee when it gets too much for them. They withstand, they stick it out, they endure, they persevere under trials. Notice, my friends, how James words verse 2. You may not be able to pick it up straight away because some versions translate it as facing trials. But actually, the literal translation of this verse that James has for us is that we will fall into trials. Like a hole in the ground that we can't avoid and we fall into. So we will fall into tribulation. Some of you know that there was a time when I fell through a hole and ended up putting my foot through the ceiling of the lounge. I was decorating the bedroom, pulled back the carpet, as you do, to protect it from the paint, and found that there was a missing floorboard. And rather than filling it in, which would have been the sensible thing to do, I just felt sure that I would avoid it. There was no way I would end up falling through a missing floorboard. But of course, you know what happened. I got engrossed in something I was doing. I stepped sideways and hey presto, leg went through the floor, through the ceiling, all the way up to the thigh. So my body was in the bedroom and my leg was dangling in the lounge below. I guess it was inevitable, wasn't it? As soon as there was a missing floorboard, I was bound to put my foot through the ceiling. Well, it was inevitable for me at least. And equally, James tells us that the trials of life are like holes that we will inevitably fall into. No ifs, buts or maybes about it. It is a definite occurrence because James says, when you fall into trials. So if trials are going to occur, what should we do about them? We need to see them for what God intends them to be, an opportunity to grow in perseverance. James 1 verse 3, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. None of us want to endure hardships and troubles, but unfortunately, living the scot-free life is not possible in this broken world, which has fallen so far from God's original intention. And when troubles come, in surprising regularity sometimes, don't despair. Do not despair, my friends, but hold on to the hope that we have in Jesus. And trust that God will ensure that there is a way out for you in the midst of your trial. And something good will come from the bad in your life. And you will grow in perseverance from this tribulation. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that we let the trial work for us and not against us. We must let it strengthen our faith and not destroy it. We must allow it to drive us to the cross of Christ and not away from the cross. Do you know the most beautiful truth about having to remain under this load that we all must bear from time to time with backs breaking and knees buckling is this? It's the words of Jesus that we find in Matthew 11, 28 to 30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, says Jesus. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You know, I just love that image of the yoke that oxen would wear. When two animals side by side wore the yoke together, the load was shared. It was carried then between them. And that, my friends, is what Jesus wants to do with some of us today who are weighed down by the burdens of life. He wants to take the weight of that burden off you. He wants to carry it with you. He wants to free you and release you from that back-breaking strain. And it is only when we allow him to do that. It is only when we invite him into our lives to walk alongside us, to wear that yoke, to bear the burdens with him. It is only then that we can persevere under trials. Do not think that there is anything or anyone who can lighten your load in the way that Jesus can. His commitment and his love is uniquely unfaltering and everlasting. He will never disappoint you. He will never let you down. He will never tire or get fed up of bearing your burden. He will never walk off and leave you to carry it on your own, because it is his yoke that we are carrying. As we lay down our burdens, as we lay down our trials and our tribulations at the foot of his cross, well, then we learn to persevere, because it is his yoke we are carrying. But there's something else that James reminds us of when speaking about adding perseverance to our faith. You see, let's not forget who it is that James was writing to. Verse 1 explains that he was writing to the 12 tribes. Now, he means the 12 tribes of Israel, which relates back to the formation of the people of God who descended from the sons of Jacob, later named Israel. So as James addresses his letter to them, he is clearly writing to fellow Jewish Christians. But note where these Jewish Christians are. They are not living comfortably in Israel any longer. No, they have been driven out of the land to all different lands as a result of the persecution that they have endured. But by James addressing his letter to all of them, it would have been circulated, it would have been duplicated, as his letter is shared to all of them in each country, in each situation. He's able to remind them of something really important, that they are not alone in their experience. The Jewish Christians in Cyprus who are facing persecution are the same as the Jewish Christians in Phoenicia who are facing the same persecution, and so on in multiple countries all over. And since James first writes in his letter about the need to persevere under trials, he no doubt hopes to remind them that they are not persevering in isolation, but in fact, they are persevering with togetherness. And equally, one way for all of us to be able to persevere in the trials and tribulations that we come across is the realization that we are not alone. You see, Christ didn't make his church by accident. The church is not some afterthought of Jesus when he got to glory. We're not the post-ascension project when Jesus got bored. The church was intentional because he knew that we would need each other in order to get through this life and to persevere when life got tough. He knew that we would need togetherness. You know, there's a lovely account from the Special Olympics of 1976 that were held in the States. A group of children with various disabilities set out to run 100 metres. And when the starting gun sounded, they all took off down the track. But about halfway along, one little boy tripped and he fell. So do you know what happened? Another runner, a little girl who had Down syndrome, she stopped and she gave the boy a little kiss to make him feel better. And then another one who had already gone past him realised that he had fallen. Do you know what he did? He came back and gave the boy a hug and to make him feel better. And then, with the race having gone by then, they just helped their friend up, the injured one, and between them, the three of them walked to the finishing line. I mean, they did not win the race, but they won the hearts of everybody who was watching, and it's still spoken about today, clearly. And so look around you, my friends. Look to your left, look to your right. That's it, some of you are. Well done. Look to the people in front, look to the ones behind, look to the ones upstairs if you can see them. Upstairs, look to the ones downstairs if you can see them. Do you know what? Together, we make up a group of people who likewise have fallen down. Each of us are falling into trials of different sorts. We are not a perfect people. We are not untouched by this broken world. And our lives and our faith is not all neatly sewn up, no matter what people may sometimes think. We are people who, like everybody else, fall into trials and clamber back out with regularity. And Jesus, the head of the church, wants each of us to reach out and to catch each other if we can, and to help somebody up when they have fallen down, and to be there to soften the blow when somebody falls. You know, that is what we are here for. We persevere with a togetherness that Christ has united us with as his body, so that we may each know his love. Nicky Gumbel says, church is not an organisation you join. It is a family where you belong, a home where you are loved, and a hospital where you find healing. That's why the Apostle Paul says that the church should rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn, Romans 12 verse 15. And that is why this is the one place where, my friends, you don't have to pretend. This is the one place. If you've got nowhere else, this is the one place where you do not need to wear a mask. Do you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to ban the word fine. How are you doing? I'm fine. Oh, that covers everything, doesn't it? Because half the time we say we're fine and actually we're not fine. We all know what fine means. Feeling inadequate, needing encouragement. Yeah? We are here for each other. This is a place where we can be ourselves, so that in our togetherness we are able to add perseverance to our faith. And do you know what, on this point, did you know that isolation and loneliness is one of the biggest social issues for our society today? Not simply for the elderly or the housebound, which is who we tend to immediately think of when we think about loneliness, but actually for people of all ages. And do you know what? Especially for those of the younger generations. They experience loneliness more than any other generation. It is well documented that those coming up behind my generation have become so accustomed to communicating via technology that actually they have very few real friends. Lots of acquaintances, lots of likes and followers on Facebook and Instagram, but very few real friends. And so loneliness and isolation is a real issue for them, as well as for others. And isn't that precisely where the Church of Christ can come alongside? Isn't that exactly what we can offer, maybe more so than any other organisation or group can do? That we can show the love and the concern and the support and the genuine friendship to those who have no one else. That is why we provide a whole host of different groups and ministries throughout the whole week, across the whole month, in order to try and meet the needs of our hurting community and to extend that hand of friendship and offer the love of Jesus. so that we may all learn to persevere through the heartaches of life with the togetherness that Christ has gifted us with. On March the 6th, 1987, Eamon Coughlin, the Irish world record holder for the 1500 metres, was running in a qualifying heat at the World Indoor Track Championships in Indianapolis. With 2.5 laps to go, he was tripped. But he fell and he got up, and with great effort he managed to catch up with the leaders again. And with just 20 yards before the finishing line, he was in third place. And do you know what he did? That was good enough to qualify for the finals. That's all he had to do. And do you know what he did? He looked over his shoulder on the inside, saw that there was no runners coming up, so he slackened his pace. And with just 1 yard to go, another runner came running up from the outside that he had not seen, overtook him and ended up in third. And Eamon ended up in fourth, and he never qualified for the finals. Coughlin's greatest comeback effort was rendered useless, worthless, because he took his eyes off the finishing line. And in life, it really doesn't matter how you start, my friends. It is how you finish that counts. And the third encouragement that James gives us on this topic is the importance of finishing well in our faith. Anybody can start well. Everybody starts full of enthusiasm, doing everything, telling everyone about Jesus, supporting everything at church. But it's another thing to keep that level of dedication and enthusiasm going for a lifetime, especially after we have been battered by life's trials. So James encourages us to finish well by adding perseverance to our faith, to keep our eyes on that finishing line. As he says in verse 4, aim for maturity and that completeness of faith. This, James says, is what transpires when we persevere in our faith despite the odds. Every time we choose in whatever trial that we are facing in order to persevere and to keep on doing, and then we take another step towards our maturity of faith. And when we persevere to the very end, do you know what we've got waiting for us? What have we got in store for us if we love the Lord Jesus Christ and we persevere until the very end? What have we got? Verse 12 tells us we have a crown of life waiting for us. Blessed is the one who perseveres unto trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. A crown that I might add, that's not like a kingly crown, but a winner's crown. The sort of crown that was awarded to winners in the ancient Olympic Games in James' day. A crown that is won. A crown that is awarded because the runner has kept on going to the finishing line. That, my friends, is our hope in the midst of our trials. Something better is coming. The finish line is ahead. A time is coming when justice will be redressed and sickness will be gone and peace will be reigning and evil will be eradicated and perfection will be known, but only when we are in the arms of Jesus, who will be waiting for us at that finishing line. So my friends, let us persevere. Let us not give up. You may be feeling worn down and used up by life, battered and bruised from the holes of tribulation that you've fallen into. But keep going. Not because of some human-based stoic determination, but because of the example of Jesus, who for the joy set before him endured the greatest trial of all, the cross of Calvary. He gave up his life so that we might live for eternity and wear that crown upon our heads. And so that now in this life we might be able to persevere, because we do it not on our own, but we do so hand in hand with Jesus, wearing his yoke and knowing his love, so that we know one day we will cross that finish line. Do you know what? I don't do it on my own, and you don't do it on your own, but we do it together, arm in arm, We support one another. We persevere together. And that's exactly how Jesus intends it to be. Let's pray together for a moment.